My name is Tiffin Horton. I have MS. MS does not have me. I have been an attorney for 28 years, and I was 10 years in private practice, and I concentrated on family law, uh, adoption, divorce, separation, wills and trust, and I dealt with abused and neglected children with the juvenile justice system here in Chicago. And I've been a public defender for 18 years, and I handle appeals. While I was in private practice, I also did Social Security law. I've also participated in several MS law days here for the National MS Society here in Chicago. And in that, I did intake and provided basic legal knowledge or direction to the people that participated in our MS Law Day. And I've done that for several years as well. And I do pro bono work. I am currently doing criminal appeals, and I will offer assistance wherever I might be able to, or lead you at least in the direction to which you'd like to go. That would help you. I was diagnosed with MS in 1993. It began, I would say, maybe 5 years before I was diagnosed. And that was the fact that I used to drive a stick shift. And I started driving without my shoes on because I thought it was easier for me. Maybe I was driving too much. Maybe I was tired. But in retrospect, I was probably losing sensitivity in my feet. So fast forward on, I graduated, then I went to law school. And my first year in law school, I noticed my books were very heavy. So I thought I was losing my balance, swaying back and forth because the books were too heavy. But in reflecting back, I was losing my sense of balance. And fast forward again, I was in the grocery store looking back and forth as you do when you are in a grocery store. And the more I would turn my head, the more my balance was affected. And I appeared like I was shopping as I was inebriated. But once again, it was my sense of balance in my ear. And that went on for a period of time. And then it seemed to magnify itself. And my aunt, who was a RN nurse in neurology, she suggested that I see a neurologist there at her hospital, which was University of Chicago. So fast forward, I went to that. And after I called it the pincushion test, I was diagnosed after an MRI with multiple sclerosis. That was very, very trying because generally I'm an excellent test taker and I've never had a problem doing so. But when I sat for the bar, it was very hot. And heat and MS don't mix together. I took the bar probably 3 times, not successful in them. I couldn't understand that because my brain never let me down. But I was having problems taking the exam. And compiled to that, I got the diagnosis of MS. It was a really difficult and heart-wrenching time for me because my balance was gone, my ability to walk free of a cane or a walker, that was gone. My ability to think clearly was gone. And it just was a really sad period. After I got the correct diagnosis, the correct medication, then I was basically back on the road, so to speak. I took the bar. I passed it first time in a new state. And so after that, then I guess my legal career and me having MS and MS not having me and controlling me was the beginning of that. I have MS. MS does not have me. MS had me in its grip for the first 4 years, perhaps after I got diagnosed. And after that, I just couldn't let it control me any longer. Read up on it, read a lot of things, learned how to control my symptoms, when was the best time for me to be active, to think, to work, to do. And that turned out for me in the morning. As I learned later on, when the sun rises, the temperature rises as well. The temperature in your body rises too. And that has a tendency to fatigue or tire you out. So I just accommodated for that, got up really early, got whatever I need to get done. And then as it got closer to noon, 11, 12, 1, I was able to relax a little bit and not have to have the hustle and bustle, because at that time, temperature is the highest. One thing that I did talk about at the MS Law Day that I participated in, and oftentimes questions were whether I disclose or don't disclose the fact that I have MS. I'd say if your MS symptoms may arise and prevent you from doing your job, then perhaps you should talk to someone, maybe not HR, maybe a supervisor, if you're doing your job. But like I said, when I alluded to the fact of temperature changes, if you're the height of performance and your job is between hours that that's not your high performance, then that's something you may need to speak to. And a reasonable accommodation is something that you can ask for. If it's not outside, if it's not going to damage the company, is not going to prevent the company optimal performance, then you can ask for a reasonable accommodation. Perhaps if I took my lunch at 11 to 11:30, that I could take a nap. You can talk to your supervisor about that. But when you are interviewing for a job, you don't have to disclose that, because you have no obligation to tell them. It's just as they have no right to ask you. So after you get the job and you get diagnosis and your symptoms start to appear at your job, perhaps that's when you may want to take the time to speak to your employer. Maybe I think that would be the safest option, because they can always use your negative job performance, which is only merely a symptom manifesting itself as you falling asleep on the job, being lazy, all those things. So once you get a diagnosis, I would share that. For instance, I was talking with a former principal, and she was saying that when she had MS for 5 years, and she never told anyone. But then when she decided to change to an alternate job, going back into the classroom with little kids kindergartners who require a lot of energy, they're high energy, and you have to be able to keep up with their energy. She said she never told anybody. My suggestion to her was little things. How about, get to work and you can park. I said, you have a handicap sticker? No, I don't. Okay, well then get to work early so you can park closer to the door. Perhaps bring your lunch so you don't have to walk here and there. Things you could do to minimize your efforts and maximize your job performance or your output. Something you should think about if that's not what you want to disclose. Walking back and forth to the halls, maybe you could, if it's okay, perhaps you could just go down the hall one day or one time a day, 2 times a day. Things that are minimal that's not going to affect your employer. I have, for instance, I just asked for an accommodation last week. I had an extremely large computer that I was carrying around. Basically, I put it on the bottom of my scooter, and I had to get somebody to help me lift it up, all that. So then I asked for reasonable accommodation because they got new, smaller computers. And since we work from home, I asked that, and immediately my supervisor said, "Sure, no problem. I have it in your office. You can come pick it up whenever you can come down here and get it." And I said, "But an unreasonable accommodation would be, I need something that outside of what's needed to do your job." Reasonable accommodation. I said it was snowing. It's hard for me to take my scooter, wait on the station platform, wait for a bus. That's what's reasonable for me is on the days that the weather is inclement weather and it's raining or snowing. If I could work at a location that's closer to my home where I can drive to and then go into the building without taking a train, without being bombarded with the elements, too hot, too cold, that's reasonable. I can do my job at another location. It's still our office location. It's not my main location, but it's an office location. Reasonable.
You're asking for a reasonable accommodation, and you and I, since we both have MS, we know what a reasonable accommodation is. What if our employer doesn't realize that that's a reasonable accommodation. I'll give you an example. I was a
Okay.
teacher. My school was not air conditioned. I was on the 3rd floor, and there were 86 steps to get upstairs. The only reason I ended up getting moved down to the 1st floor was when I had occupational vocational rehab come in. And then all of a sudden, my boss was like, I think maybe we'll move you downstairs. But what do you say to somebody that's asking for a reasonable accommodation and they're looking and they're saying, you don't need that. We just can't.
Okay, I guess I would say, in terms of when you ask for reasonable accommodation, think about what your employer would necessarily. I mean, I need to have a new air conditioning unit in my room if I'm going to be on the 3rd floor. Well, what if we moved you down and it was cooler down there and it wasn't so hot?
I bought my own air conditioner.
Okay, but I'm saying that, and then the fact that you having to walk because obviously there's no elevator there, correct?
No.
So that would be reasonable. Now, if that was a school, was it a private school or public school?
It was a private school. But what if our boss doesn't understand that these are accommodations that we, as somebody with MS, would.
Okay, the way I would, when I first asked for an accommodation, I said under the ADA, because that is the law that backs you, under the American with Disabilities Act, a reasonable accommodation is one that I can do, help me to do my job and be better for you.
Okay.
I'd always phrase it that way because that kind of takes you and your personal feelings out of the equation. I'm asking for a reasonable accommodation under Americans with Disabilities Act because I could be more effective doing my job if I had whatever the accommodation would be.
I never would have thought about that. I just bought my own things. They just don't understand. If they don't have somebody that they know that has MS, they don't understand the difference. Because I did ask for having my lunch hour and then right after having a free period. So if I needed to go home in the middle of the day, I could do that because I live close to the school. So, I mean, I did ask for things like that. But I can see where there would be a lot of employers out there that don't understand. Well, I mean, that was just an example that I had. But I'm sure there are a lot of people out there listening that,
Oh, clearly.
you know, my boss just doesn't understand, or that you don't want to necessarily tell them all of your limitations because they might want to get rid of you.
No, I mean,
Try to get rid of you.
but I don't think they can ask them. I mean, if you are not saying, I need A, B, C, D, or I have problems with A, B, C, D, they can't say, hey, does A affect you? Does B affect? That's personal. That's against the HIPAA laws.
Right. So you don't necessarily have to tell them you have MS, but you would just have to say, according to the ADA.
And if you need to, you can get a note from your doctor. Hey, Dr. X, I
Right.
have to walk upstairs at my job. If you can, tailor some kind of letter that says that.
Without
That's
telling the diagnosis.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I think that's a good one.
But it is, if you phrase it in terms of the
Right.
ADA, everyone knows what the ADA is.
When is it a good time for somebody with MS who is getting further along in their diagnosis, or they could be younger and it's just moving a little bit more quickly?
Okay.
When should they consult an attorney about their affairs? Like, especially things like if I have to go into a nursing home, what's the best way so that a nursing home doesn't get all of my money, that I still have things for my children? I guess he's worried if he has to go into a nursing home, will they go after his property first? Or will he be able to give that property to his siblings?
I would probably do that prior to going into a nursing home because
Okay.
that's once you're in the nursing home, your assets can be looked at the facility. Okay, so you have whatever money you have, and then you have to sell that, do whatever, because you're here receiving our services and they're $5,000 a month something.
Right.
And you've got $5,000, $10,000. So you've got to deplete that before we will seek to reach out to your insurance agent or something along those lines. So, I think a living trust would be a better route because that gives you control of your property while you're living, and then whomever, your family, your loved ones, will not have to go through probate, and there's fees associated with that.
Okay.
So if you designate, I want to leave my favorite brown sweater to Aunt Margaret, then upon termination of your life, then there's no fighting because the brown sweater belongs to Aunt Margaret.
Right.
And then if you have a living trust, prior to going into a nursing home, I would designate somebody as a trustee in control of your property.
Okay.
If that
We'll
kind of
let him
helps.
know. Yeah, I will let him know that. Because a lot of the questions I have were like a lot of the Social Security questions. And we had just touched upon that at one point, but I know I didn't realize that I should have kept pushing and going into, the appeals over and over to get that. And I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Well, that's the purpose. Then the more obstacles I put in your way, the
Right.
more you'll back up. You'll think, oh, I don't have a good case because they denied me once, they denied me twice. The third time, like I said, that's a face-to-face appeal with a judge who can see you, see how you are. So it means more than just you saying, I can't do this on a piece of paper.
Right.
They can literally see that you can't lift your arm, you can't do this, they can see what you said was true. Oh, and then I will look further in your medical history, whatever you provided to us with your application. Oh, okay, so that does make some sense now. Oh,
Right.
I see that you can't do ABC. So yeah. After you can work to a certain point, but when you start working and you're getting Social Security, when you start making what they give you per month, then you'll have to start paying back dollar for dollar.
Right.
So oftentimes it's best for you not to. Well, I know for myself, I was on it for a short period of time, but then I got a legal job. So that far superseded what I was getting from them. So I just told them to keep it because I wasn't going to start paying them dollar for dollar what they were giving me when I actually didn't need them to give it anymore.
If someone was going to come to you, Tiffin, and was struggling with, whether to tell an employer, if they have a condition like MS, what would be sort of your?
I would approach it. I'd say, hello, John. Nice to talk to you, or whatever. What exactly do you do? If this person does construction, I'll say, John, you're out in the heat, which can exacerbate your symptoms. You have to stand on your legs for a long period of time. Is there something that you can do in the construction industry that you work where you wouldn't be standing so much? You would be doing something different. Do you have the option to, to drive or to do something else? And then we'd see what that would be. Because if there was not that, and you're accused of, say, drinking and all that, but that's MS, you'll have to disclose that. And I, say, I really enjoy working here, blah, blah, blah. I've been here for X amount of time. And is there anything else I can do? Oftentimes, depending on what type of job, for construction, maybe, maybe not. I don't know many construction jobs that are not hands-on. Then if somebody like a doctor will come in and say, do I tell the hospital that I have MS? What will they do? I mean, what kind of doctor are you? If you're a surgeon, I think you should because your tremors, things like that. So it would depend on your job and what symptoms that you had. If you don't manifest any symptoms at that time, that does not mean, it could mean that you will never have them, but then it may not. So it would depend on what type of job you have. If you're a waiter, and you want to know whether you disclose or not, do you just work the cash register, sitting and standing, or do you serve food? Because then what's going on with your hand? All the symptoms that possibly may manifest in you or have the potential at some point in time. If that, in fact, is the case, you may have to tell your employer. And oftentimes your job, once you disclose that, perhaps with your job, you may not be able to work there any longer. If you ask them if there's something else you can do, you enjoy working for them? I'd phrase it in that manner. Is there something that I can do, where I don't have to lift 25 pounds, don't have to do this, don't have to do that. So that's how I would ask them, what do you do? And are there opportunities at your job where you can do this that wouldn't exacerbate this symptom?
How accommodating does an employer need to be, and how accommodating do you need to be as an employee? I mean, it sounds, as we get older, with or without a chronic condition like MS, the questions you're asking are great questions. If I'm a day laborer, my back is going to go out no matter what, and I'm not going to be able to do those things. So maybe I become a supervisor. But, some of these things are time delimited, so for some employers, if you say I have this condition, they might be thinking, is this 2 months? Is it a year? I mean, it gets into an interesting discussion, particularly if you don't want to disclose what condition you have. And they might have a limited understanding of what, for example, what MS is. I mean, if you have relapse and remitting, it gets better, worse, better, worse. It's a really hard thing to predict. So who has the obligation to be more agile and flexible in this dance, if you will? I mean, how does it work?
Well, I'd say me as an employer, I can only do what you as the employee patient would give me information to. I think your question is, what kind of information do I as the employee have to provide you, the employer? Well, anything that's going to affect your ability to do your job, like I alluded to with regards to a waitress or a waiter, you have bad tremors because of your MS, so you're not going to be able to serve anymore. So then it would be on me to say, I enjoy working here, and you can provide an alternative to that. Me as an employer, I'm like, your job as a waiter or waitress, it's not for me to find a job for you. You want to work for me. So therefore, you would have to come with what's a reasonable suggestion. Just like I said, I have to do stuff with the computer because I write motions all the time. And I need a computer, but I can't say you need to buy me a new computer. A reasonable accommodation could have been a used computer, whatever else, but I need another lighter weight computer. And that was my request for it. So what your reasonable accommodation request is, have something in mind for a reasonable solution. I would assume that when you begin working for whomever you work for, you have a list of employee obligations or things that you're required to do for your job. And the employer has some kind of list or something. I will do A, B, C. And as an employee, you do C, D, F. So within that realm, depending on what the obligations are of your employer and your obligations, that would kind of tailor your activity level, if that answers your question. But keep in mind that your reasonable accommodations, but your employer may say, oh, that's too financially, it's not feasible financially for us to do that. We can't do it. So goodbye. So when asking for a reasonable accommodation, make sure it's not financially out of the question. We have 15 floors and we have no elevator. I need to have an elevator. Well, first of all, not only under the ADA is that illegal with no elevator. It's just, you can't have 15 floors and expect people to walk up and down 15 flights of stairs. So that's unreasonable. And then that would cover another avenue to which you could perhaps financially sue your employer. You have 15 floors, no elevator. You expect us to climb up, and I'm working on 14 and I'm having difficulty walking. Well, you can't, that breaks all kinds of laws right there.
Right.
The other topic that we talked about before that would be great to get into is sort of empowering people and also reimbursement. Those two is two separate things, making people feel that they're empowered for their own health care, that they can ask the right questions and get the answers, and also get the resources that they need to get the care that they need.
To get them to advocate for themselves, I ask them, who do they have in their family to help support them? And perhaps we could have a family discussion, maybe. Give them questions to ask the person. But I tell them to get a partner to help them. Someone that is going to be able to speak for them. And if I have information from them, then perhaps I'll lead them to places or people that I know that offer some sort of assistance, whether it be legally to channel them to wherever they need to go, or just talk to them as a friend. I mean, I would, I would suggest that. I think, I don't know if many people are faith-based, but a good ally perhaps may be your faith leader.
Or even somebody within that organization.
True.
You know, maybe they can hook you up with somebody that's going through that.
And the great thing about the internet is there are groups for everybody. There's groups for everybody. And you can find that. I think you can find that. But I think a good support system, I'd start with I mean, it's weird now because of COVID, but I would start with an MS group. You can find out lots of different things. I don't know how that works now. Several times people have asked me, don't you get tired? It seems like you're always running, you're always doing. I would say, aren't you fatigued? And I'm like, well, no, because I control my time when I do certain things. And I try to do things. When I first got MS, I was reading a book and it was saying that you should do things either like in a line or a circle. Don't go from X, this, that. Just kind of go smooth your back to a circle, back to where you are, as opposed to going here, there. And that is tiring. Just go in a circle. And I got some really good advice reading this book. It was saying that why don't you go and get like takeout menus to various restaurants, wherever you like to go. You get it and you make your decision at at your house. Then when you go to the restaurant, you're not harassed by the wait staff, which makes you anxious. Oh my God, I don't, just get to the menu, make your decision in your head. Then you get there, you're there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. I appreciate the honor, and I
Chris.
enjoyed the interview.
We don't have anybody that's spoken from the legal profession that also has MS, so it's really very empowering to have your voice as part of the message.
Certainly.
So it's a great resource.
And if you guys come across any questions or whatever somebody might have for you, certainly shoot me an email or something. I'd be happy to address that.
Well, thanks. Have a great evening. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, Tiffin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.